I am going to introduce one of our sponsors, Donnelly Financial Solutions, and I'm going to bring up Mike Lemus. Mike is Solutions Engineer for Active Solutions at Donnelly Financial Solutions, also called DFIN.
Thank you, Michelle. Welcome back, everybody, to GovFin 2025, Designing a Digital Future. Yesterday, we had some great discussions surrounding the impacts of machine-readable financial data on governmental accounting and financial reporting, including how to implement machine-readable data in financial statements and how it helps organize and standardize data across periods. We also got to see some great demonstrations of some XBRL tagging tools available in the marketplace today to aid in the tagging journey of municipalities, reports, and other governmental reporting too. We also had a discussion on the progress of the Financial Data Transparency Act, or FDTA, with Mark Joffe and Dave Sanchez, and what the future of both voluntary and involuntary electronic reporting might shape up to be. We also got to get a little insight into the use of local government data in state audits, where we explored the BARS system of coding governmental reporting accounts with Stacy Tellers of the Office of the Washington State Auditor, as well as Bob Hinkle's own namesake reporting system that assists the expansive number of governmental entities in the state of Ohio. And also we got an engaging keynote address from Deborah Austin, JD, PhD, from the University of Denver's Sturm College of Law, where she shed light on how our experiences shape how our brain reacts, learns, and adapts to make us more prepared in both our professional and personal lives. As Michelle noted earlier, my name is Mike Lemus, a CPA and a lead solutions consultant with Donnelly Financial Solutions, also known as DFIN. We're honored to sponsor such an important organization as XBRL US and their continued efforts to advance electronic reporting techniques and knowledge in the finance, accounting, and governmental reporting spaces. For a little bit of background about DFIN, DFIN is a leading global provider of innovative software and technology-enabled financial, regulatory, and compliance solutions. Some of you may know us historically as RR Donnelly. In 2016, DFIN became an independent, publicly traded company with a focus on software-based solutions and service, departing from our primarily print and distribution-based offerings. DFIN is currently the leading SEC filing agent for both publicly traded companies as well as fund companies, serving over 75% of the Fortune 1000. We accomplish this through a variety of software-based products, including Active Disclosure for private and public financial reporting, governmental reporting, including ACFRs, and sustainability reporting. Demonstrating the value of this software is one of my own primary responsibilities. We also have Arc Suite for fund management and related reporting, as well as Venue for secure data environments for significant organizational transactions, such as mergers, acquisitions, and initial public offerings. We provide domain expertise, enterprise software, and data analytics for every stage of our clients' business and investment life cycles. Markets are going to fluctuate, regulations are going to evolve, and technology is going to advance. Through it all, DFIN helps deliver confidence with the right solutions in moments that matter. Today's sessions are going to include updates about the GASB Digital Gap Taxonomy, a review of legislative and regulatory activities in Washington that will affect both state and local governments, a discussion of best practices for state treasurers, and much more. But first, we'll kick off with a keynote from Dave Young, the Colorado State Treasurer. And here to introduce Treasurer Young is Naomi Boyd, PhD, and the Dean of the Daniels College of Business at the University of Denver. Dean Boyd, please join me on stage.
Thank you, Mike. It's great to have the opportunity to introduce Dave Young, who is the Colorado State Treasurer. He oversees $90 billion in state assets and leads initiatives to strengthen Colorado's long-term financial health. With more than 5 decades of service as an educator, legislator, and now treasurer, Young has dedicated his career to building a government that works for everyone. A champion for economic justice and financial empowerment, he brings a lifelong commitment to equity, education, and fiscal responsibility to every facet of his work. Treasurer Young, could you please join me on stage?
Good morning, Naomi. Thank you so much. And hello, everybody. It's great to be with you. Thank you for the kind introduction. Give me a moment here to make sure I'm accessing all the tools the right way and sharing my screen. I'm going to be running the slides here as well. So we'll see if I can juggle all of that. Give me a little feedback. Can you see the slide? Looking for a little feedback here.
Hey, Dave.
Can you see?
Or-
Hi,
Yep,
can you see the slide?
it's perfect. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna head
All right.
backstage.
Very good. Thanks. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Sorry. Just like Dr. Austin yesterday, had a little drama right before joining, had to restart my machine. And so just making sure the technologies are working. It's a real pleasure to be here, be invited, a real honor to be invited to Keynote today. And I want to thank the XBRL US and University of Denver for inviting me. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do in the Colorado Department of the Treasury. I'm also going to explain our long-term outlook and what I believe to be several of Colorado's challenges. And then I certainly want to get to the considerations that are the focus of this conference, and that is the FDTA and the compliance with its implementation. And so we set aside about 20 minutes for discussion at the end. So please speak up. I'll try to be brief with my remarks so we have plenty of time for that. So let me launch in. Colorado Department of the Treasury is a small but mighty team comprising about 60 dedicated public servants, including me. And our efforts power the work of the entire state. What I mean by that is that we're the agency that actually keeps the trains running on time. You may see a joint budget committee or a budget committee of the state decide how much money is going to be spent for the entire budget year. But minute by minute, we're the ones making sure we're meeting all the obligations. And we have a very intense work that we do on accounting, cash flow, banking, investing, as we work through these state funds. So we have very immediate work that we do, but we also engage in a lot of long range work, and that certainly crosses over into the investment portfolio. It's a very conservatively invested portfolio of about $17 billion. Goes up and down depending on where we're at on cash flow. In addition to these core functions of what we do, we administer several public facing programs as well. And these are push us into the service agency area, which I always love to be in as a former educator and public servant. I always enjoy the public facing work that we do. We have the Great Colorado Payback, which is unclaimed property. We have about $2 billion that we are working to return back to people here in the state of Colorado. And there are programs across the country and nation that do that as well. We're returning more unclaimed property than ever and making it easier to claim it. So if you haven't checked lately, you can go to the Great Colorado Payback. You can also go to unclaimed.org. I was president of all unclaimed property programs around the world. A few years ago, unclaimed.org has a map, and you can click into whatever state you're in or country and see if there's some unclaimed property waiting for you to claim. We also run a state facilitated retirement savings program for people in the private sector. Now, I am on the board of the public pension here in Colorado, but we also know that there's a retirement savings crisis, and we've launched the Colorado Secure Savings Program, and I'll talk more about that in just a minute. We also have a program that provides housing security for seniors and military veterans that is to help them with fluctuations in property tax so that they can continue to live in place and aren't at risk of losing their home. And so let me keep moving on here. And you're going to get this slide. I'm not going to go through all these bullet points because you're going to get this deck and you'll be able to look through all these. But this gives a little more detail to the first thing I talked about, those core functions, and gives a little bit more viewpoint into or glimpse into the work that we do. But it's a pretty complex and not always well understood operation. People kind of think of the Treasury as a black box, and we don't know what you're doing in there. So I always try to take a little bit of time to open the door, shine the light, see have everybody see what it is that we actually do in the Treasury. And by the way, if you're not familiar with Larimer Square, that's a picture of Larimer Square. We love. We have quite a bit of work that we do. It's broad-based. I think I skipped a slide here. Hang on. Nope. In a broad-based view of the work we do, but here's some numbers. Again, you're going to get this, and you're going to get a chance to kind of give a proportion to the work we do. You can see that just in 1 year, we returned $80 million of funds back to people just through our program alone, and a lot of claims processed. We do temporary cash flow assistance in school districts because their school year doesn't match up with the way funds come in from property taxes. So we give them interest-free loan to make sure they're able to meet their obligations as they start the school year. And other numbers that are there, you can kind of take a look at the volume of the work that we do. That 133 million for secure savings actually is a bigger number now. We're constantly growing, and it's exciting to see that take off. We have some short and long-term challenges that we're facing as a state. And I mentioned that a lot of the work we do in the Treasury core functions are minute by minute kind of work that we do. We're tracking all the transactions and activities of all the different departments and agencies and making sure we have cash flow to back up all the obligations that we have to meet. But there are other short-term considerations, and if you're paying any attention locally to the news, you know that we actually have another budget crisis. We had a budget crisis in the past legislative session that just finished. Had a cut budget by 1.2 billion, and now the news today is from yesterday is that we need to probably cut another billion from the state's budget. So this produces both short-term and long-term problems. We have an ongoing education funding crisis. It's immediate now, but it's been around for quite a while. We have affordable housing issues that aren't unique to Colorado, but certainly on our radar screen. And we have some politicization of things that we do that should really just be common sense around investing, but have become politicized. But in the long term, and I think I'm not unique with this with treasurers, I think treasurers in general like to look out on the horizon and think about how we solve some of the really thorny problems that face us. I think, and I know this from being a legislator, sometimes you have the short-term work you have to do. For example, this budget crisis that we have, you have to deal with today's problem, and they certainly are going to do that. But somebody needs to take a step back and look at the long term. And we have some really long-term issues that are thorny, and they're related to some of our short-term problems. We have the most restrictive tax and expenditure provision of any state in the country in our Colorado Constitution. It's called TABOR, which creates some real long-term challenges for us when we try to solve these thorny problems. Let me dive into one where we're actually attempting to solve a long-term thorny problem, and this is the retirement savings problem that I talked to you about. It's not unique to Colorado. I think across the nation, Pew has researched and discovered that about 50% of the people here in the country that work in the private sector don't have retirement savings. And what's going to happen when they retire is they're going to not have enough money to be sustainable in retirement just through Social Security alone. And so they're in poverty in retirement. What's the impact of that? Well, it's an undignified retirement. It breaks my heart. People who have contributed all the way through their working career now in poverty because they are unprepared with savings that will supplement Social Security for them in retirement. And it's a fixable problem. It's not one you can fix overnight. It takes a lot of time. So I spend a lot of time not with people in the end of their careers. I'm spending a lot of time with people at the beginning of their working years and finding ways to help them save. And in Colorado, we discovered while we're not quite at 50%, 40% of our private sector workers, about 1 million people, did not have a way to save for retirement at work. And so we actually implemented and we launched with the help of some other states, the Colorado Secure Savings Program that uses payroll deduction to transfer money from payroll into the individual saver's account. It's a Roth IRA. And what's kind of unique about it is it's not tagged to the business. It is actually the employee's account. If they move from one job to another, that account just travels with them seamlessly and encourages them to continue to save. It starts at a default rate of 5% with auto escalators. And as I say, we're really launching off well on this. And because we got some help to get started from other states, we wrote in to our legislation here in Colorado that we could partner with other states that want to launch. And we found that there were several states that were wanting to run retirement savings programs like ours, but they just didn't have the size to be able to pull it off. But by partnering with us, they were able to do that. So we partnered with Maine, Delaware, Vermont, Nevada, and now most recently, it's not on the slide there, but we have started the partnership process with Minnesota as well. And so we're working nationally, and we're the first state in the nation to offer this kind of a consortium. It's called the Partnership for a Dignified Retirement, to try to help other states lift up their workers and make sure they're sustainable and have a dignified retirement. And so we're going to continue to do that. We work locally in our state to keep amplifying the program and making sure people are aware of it and then access it. The bill that we wrote, interestingly enough, just said that businesses that didn't offer retirement savings had to do something. They could use our program, which is free, but they could also use a private sector plan. And it turns out that as a result of the legislation, we had a 45% uptick in private sector plan adoption as well. So I think we're bending this really thorny long-term problem into a plus for our state and for other states. And it's an example of the kind of work that I think treasurers like to do in the long term, but you can't solve the problem overnight. It takes a real concerted effort to get that done. Another example, and I'll be brief here, is we've recognized our infrastructure shortfall here in the state of Colorado. I was calculating it at least $100 billion deficit. We see the erosion of our roads and bridges, but it's not just that when I talk about infrastructure. I lump in affordable and accessible housing. I talk about our water infrastructure. We've had a real serious water situation here in the state of Colorado, but it's also our K-12, P-12 schools. It's digital and electrical transmission. It's a whole lot of things. And I got corrected at one point. One of the experts told me it might be as much as $250 billion, 250 billion. And so people say, don't those big numbers scare you? And, you know, big numbers don't scare me at all. You know, what scares me is when we ignore them. They don't get any smaller. And so we've launched a financing authority that will help us bring new capital into the state. You got to have a snappy acronym. It's called BUILD. Building urgent infrastructure and leveraging dollars. And so it's another example of a long-term effort that we're making in order to address a thorny problem. And so now let me jump over into this FDTA compliance issue. And now that we've laid the groundwork of kind of what we do in the Treasury, I want to take some time to really address this. You know, so I want you to be aware that I've been in technology throughout my entire career. I taught technology. I started as a coder right out of high school in a contractor that worked for the Defense Department down in Colorado Springs. I taught a master's program that emphasized technology when I moved from K-12 to higher ed. So I've been involved with technology, and I really value it and see it as a useful tool. And so I'm deeply concerned that we make sure we utilize our tools well, and certainly the work that is going on here in order to move to better uses of technology in our financial reporting is something of interest and support for me. But we have an obligation to do it properly and make sure that it works effectively. And so one of the things that becomes a challenge, I think, and you're starting to hear this perhaps, is concern about implementation when it comes to budget and to the utilization of staff. And as I mentioned earlier, we had to cut 1.2 billion out of the state's budget last time, which meant all of our requests for additional FTE, including coming up to just full scale in our accounting team. Those FTE requests were not honored because we had to cut the budget. And here we head into yet another round of budget cutting. We aren't going to fill those positions again and maybe even lose some. So this is a concern when we're asked to do more with less. Can we really step up and do that? So I know that there's some really great solutions as far as the technology software is concerned, that there's offerings of open source software that may work well. But there's also a component of just staff time and having the ability to implement effectively. And so these are all considerations. I want to be sure I pull my notes up here, make sure I'm hitting all the issues. And we need to make sure that the implementation actually fits in with the software that we're using currently. And so I actually reached out to our state controller I work with very closely, Bob Jaros, and asked him, we have accounting software that we all use called Core here in the state of Colorado. And he's fully aware and is waiting for more rule and regulation, but they're configuring the core software so that this compliance will move forward. And so I think that's good news. I talked to my friends at PARA, the public pension program here in Colorado. I sit as one of the trustees on the board, and likewise, they said they're moving towards being in compliance as well. And so what I get a little worried about is, and I'm going to be interested to hear what is being talked about at municipal level and even other entities like ditch companies and others that have reporting requirements and compliance as well. And to see, change management becomes a pretty interesting process when you're moving people from something that they've done a certain way for a long period of time to a different way of doing things. And it's certainly the goal of making things easier, smoother, more effective, and efficient is a goal that we all ascribe to. But that change process sometimes creates a barrier. And I think that's going to be the challenge, is to work through that change management. One of the things that we've really focused on in the Treasury, and it's because I have personal connection. I have a sister who's extremely disabled. And so throughout my life, I've been very attuned to the fact that there's a large proportion of our population that need accommodations to actually fully participate in society and in our government. And so we've done a lot of work with support of the governor and the legislature around transforming the work we do in the Treasury. And this isn't unique to the Treasury. It's all the departments in the state of Colorado to comply with the ADA and to make sure that our website and all of our readable documents are fully accessible to people. And I think this actually provides an opportunity, because we've been expending money to make these conversions. And if we're doing that so that accessibility tools like screen readers can actually read, we're actually talking about machine readable documents. And so I think if we blend the work we're doing with other efforts, and I didn't get to all the sessions yesterday, maybe this is a topic of conversation, but I think it's an opportunity for us to actually work and create some opportunity to maybe get multiple things done at the same time. And so I'm going to stop there, and I think I'm going to unshare my screen if I can spot the button. And come back. So hopefully I didn't talk so long that we don't have time for questions. How'd I do?
You did great.
All right.
So I think we have a couple of questions popping up in the chat. So I'll go ahead and read the first one to you, if that's okay.
Great.
The first one is, Governor Paulus was a sponsor of federal legislation that later became FDTA all the way back in 2015. Given that, shouldn't Colorado pioneer FDTA implementation, and couldn't the state treasurer help with that by providing software and training to local governments?
Well, certainly the governor has provided great leadership, both when he was in Congress and now that he's been in that position as governor of the state of Colorado. It's been a turbulent time. I think sometimes you forget the environment within which we've been working. We've had COVID, we've had economic turmoil as a result of that. We now have more economic turmoil. I mentioned the budget crunch that we're in. There's conversation now yesterday with the budget committee of actually tapping into our general fund reserve in order to backfill the loss of revenue that we're recognizing for the current budget year. So I mentioned that there's going to be cuts. We may actually lose staff in the Treasury. That's a little scary thought to me. Protection of the taxpayer dollars is the number one job of the Treasury. And so as people are saying, hey, but we have these great programs. We have things that have immediate value, and we have some that have long-term value. I think certainly this conversion to machine readable financial data has long-term value. And can't we take some money and apply that to make sure that we're moving to a more effective, efficient, and maybe cost-saving approach some years down the line. And it's a tough, I'm glad I'm not on the budget committee because they're going to have to make some tough decisions. We certainly stand ready in the Treasury to do that, but we can only supply money based on law. And so the Joint Budget Committee, actually the legislative branch, makes the decisions about how money is going to be spent. It looks like we're going to have a special session this next month in August, and certainly dealing with this budget shortfall will be part of that, and then a regular session starting in January. We're always active in the Treasury saying we think there are better ways or different ways to do this, but I don't get a vote. And in fact, what happens is after they pass the law, they say, here's what we decided, now follow the law. And we are very diligent in making sure we follow the law. So I'll be a player in that. I certainly, understand the legislative process, having been a legislator, very active in that. But at the end of the day, I'm not the final decider of any of that, nor is the governor. The governor will be playing the same kind of role as well. And, we'll weigh in and we'll see how that plays out. But we've got some really serious budget challenges that are going to mean that we don't even fund our essential services. For example, child welfare may get cut to some degree. I don't know what the final decision is going to be. K-12 education may get cut. Higher education may get less money. I mean, these are essential services that people depend on. And so saying, can't we take some money and put it somewhere else? It's like, well, what of these essential services should we cut more in order to provide that funding? And that's a pretty tough conversation, which is why I started my answer with saying, I'm glad I'm not on the budget committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Treasurer Young. That certainly is really important. And we've got
now's about the time my wife would be saying, stop being Debbie Downer.
Well, these are certainly challenging.
You have to be a realist, right? You have to face the facts of the situation as well.
That's right. So we have one more question I'll pass along to you. As this is from Brad Mickus. As someone who researches and teaches governmental accounting, I was interested in your comments about retirement and infrastructure obligations. Are there other significant unfunded liabilities that might not be fully captured on the financial statements, but are critical for long-term decision-making?
Yeah, I think that in general, there's a concern that often that well, let me back up. When a bill is passed by the legislature, and I've been a part of this process as well, the state agencies that are affected by that particular bill are asked to weigh in. And now that I'm not a bill sponsor running bills, now that I'm in the Treasury, we're on the receiving end of that request for what is going to be the impact of the bill that, as it runs. And typically they're going to say, what's your immediate impact in the next budget year? And then there's some conversation about the out years. Would there be in 2, 3, 5 years impacts as well? But this is an area where I don't think we do a very good job of estimating the impacts long range. And sometimes it takes some modeling in order to be able to do that, which we don't. It's sometimes referred to as dynamic modeling, but there's lots of different ways to kind of look at this. But I think, again, this is one of those things where you could put some money into a process to help us really understand the long range impacts of something. You make a change now, it costs some money now, but what is the best estimates for the positive or negative impacts of spending that money now? And often we miss the positive impacts. And this is a perfect example of what this conference is trying to look forward and look out to. But we don't really have a good way in state government to model that, to actually say, well, you know what, this is a real big problem. We did that in the work that we did on the Secure Savings Program. We actually had a study program first. We got a board together and studied it. Sometimes I don't like study committees because it's the end of your bill. It's like, oh, we don't want to implement it, so we'll just study it, and then nobody does anything with the study. And in this case, we actually ended up acting on it moving forward. And one of the studies that we did was the cost of doing nothing. And we actually engaged a private sector vendor, did a procurement with them, and they did this cost of doing nothing study. It's eConsult. And they forecasted out into the future that if we didn't address this retirement savings problem, we were facing, with people in retirement and in poverty, a really high level of utilization of safety net services. And they actually put a number to that. The biggest number was, remarkably, Medicaid, that people who are in poverty and retirement need that gap insurance to fill the void between that, what they need and what Medicare covers. And if they can't afford to buy gap insurance, Medicaid fills that gap. And the cost of doing nothing was $18 billion, at least $18 billion over the next 15 years. And so that was a few years ago. So hopefully we're bending the curve on that as well. But this was a startling number. So as I talked to business owners who weren't crazy about having a requirement, you're required to do something. You're required to offer some kind of a program. You can use ours, which I said is free, but takes some administrative time, or you can go to the private sector and you can purchase one in the private sector, but you have to do something. And they're like, that's an unfunded mandate to us as a business owner. And I said, yes, but we're at the place of hard choices, and we've done this forecasting out. Do you want to take some steps now to solve the problem? Or do you want to look out into the future and have an $18 billion tax bill that you're going to have to pony up for? And I haven't run into anybody yet that thinks that driving people into poverty and having to pay an $18 billion tax bill to solve that problem is a good way to do it. But it made the point, it allowed us to actually pass the bill. And guess what? We passed that bill in 2020. It took us a few years to actually implement, but we passed the bill in 2020. And remember, that was at the height of COVID. And the Joint Budget Committee was cutting $2.2 billion out of the budget at the moment that we passed this bill. Now, we found creative ways of funding the startup costs of getting this program rolling. And that's why it took a little bit longer to get it off the ground. But everybody understood that today's the right day to solve this problem. We can't wait. And it's because we had these studies that allowed us to do that. But we don't do that typically for every bill that comes through. And I do think that there are many instances where if we had this and we could actually forecast out the impact, not just to state government, but to other local entities in the state as well, so it helped them understand the realities. I think when everybody realizes they're about to lose, that's when people begin to work together. But sometimes you have to have some way to actually make the point, and it can't be just buzzwords. You actually have to have some real hard information that helps people understand the condition and what will happen if they don't act.
Well, thank you so much, Treasurer Young, for all of your amazing insights and for the time that you're spending with us this morning. And more than anything, thank you for your service and leadership in the state of Colorado.
I've loved doing the job. I taught junior high for about 25 years. I love doing that. And, you know, I've always been a public servant essentially, and I just love doing the work. So appreciate everyone's attention to this big issue around financial transparency. It's an important issue. So thank you for that. Take care, everybody.